Walk with me through the cellar door.
A storm is coming, Francis.
A portal to a more skeptical world.
Cellar Door Skeptics begins right now. Prepare for the revolution with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna.
Welcome back to Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Tonight is going to be a fun-tastic episode. There's so much going on that's happened this week. There's so much going on that's happening today as we record that I don't even know where to start. I feel like John Oliver sometimes. Like, sometimes I just literally want to sit here and go, and that's the news tonight, folks, and then go into an epic rant that I don't have in me, to go into a mini comedy special, to be then hit you over the head again with more bad news. That's what this weekend felt like. That's what this week feels like.
Oh, I don't know. I'm just exhausted, dude. I mean, it's going to be ranty no matter what we do. This one is going to be rough, though. We pretty much cut the entire show into like 12 different pieces to choose what we're going to record tonight. That is how insane the news is. Like, I remember when we were talking gun control, and it feels like 1,000 years ago. I mean, it really does feel like. It feels like 1,000,000 years ago that we were like having a serious conversation, and there was a march by children in Washington. What? Even North Korea last week feels like it was a month ago. Like, this is just, it's too much to keep up with sometimes.
Yeah.
It's
Donald Trump visits North Korea. We go, what the fuck? Then they turn around and all this shit happens this week. We have Space Force. We leave the UN Human Rights Council, and we are now separating children from their families. It's the Twilight Zone, man. Like, it makes me feel like I recently watched the 3rd season of Rick and Morty, right? And how he always goes to these different worlds and these alternate realities, right? That's what this feels like. We're like stuck in this dark timeline. Or if anybody knows what the show Community is, and I don't know if that's a weird, obscure reference,
I'm
but
sure a ton of people know what Community is. It's super popular.
But Community is an amazing show. But they have what's called like the darkest timeline, right? That's what this feels like. This feels like we should all be wearing fucking black mustaches, and I guess I'll just turn the explicit rating on now. I've been drinking scotch, and so I feel like having these black mustaches.
So
you just walk around going, it's the evil timeline,
or maybe it's the evil twin on the after school soap opera that the moms wear, where it's like the evil twin just has a mustache or a beard or a goatee or something, and they wear a leather jacket.
Your wife.
I don't know. I mean, I was trying to think of a time when it felt like this much bad stuff was happening to the, I guess, progressive community, and like even in the George W. Bush, like creating a war on false pretenses, and the vice president shooting lawyers in the faces with shotguns. Like that still was, it was bad, but it was comical bad. You know what I mean? Like, it was kind of like, oh, this is kind of stupid, or yeah, we're starting a war, but it'll probably end quickly, and it won't be as bad as we thought it would be. And it was just as bad. It was worse than we thought it would be. 500,000 to 1,000,000 Iraqis died, whatever. That's a whole nother conversation. But like, it just really feels like everything that could go wrong, maliciously wrong, is just sincerely going wrong at the same time. And I can't think of a time in my life when it was like this hard of a swing away from like any kind of, I guess, moderate middle ground rational thinking. It's like a shotgun blast out there, like just random thoughts. Anything that sticks to the wall sticks to the wall. Stream of consciousness from an egotistical, self-centered pseudo Republican. Like, I don't even think Trump is a legit Republican anymore. There's so many Republicans that are against some of the stuff he's doing on immigration. So
all I can say is
that's
I
kind of the
hope this
precursor for the
motivates people, man. I hope it does. I hope we get a motivation, like even on the Republican side. Like, it would be nice to see even Republicans run against Trump. They'd be like, yeah, hey, we don't want you as a president anymore.
Well, the whole idea, the California jungle primary, I don't know if you're familiar with that.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, it's essentially just the top two people irregardless of party, run. So if like 2 Republicans get the most votes out of all of the candidates that are running, you have the 2. So it's just like the primaries twice. You have a primary for the primary, and you have another primary, and you could have a moderate Republican in there. Everybody's like, okay, we're a deep red city, but you know what? We're gonna pick the middle ground guy, because these really far extreme right guys are dangerous. Like, I would love to see that kind of a realization come out of the right. But what I really think is happening is just everything is shifting to the right now. We're in like a geopolitical recession where everything is moving to the right. Even the Republicans are like, we're going to go even further. And then the Democrats are going, like, they've been running stuff like Connor Lamb in Pennsylvania. That dude was further right than Hillary Clinton. I mean, yeah. he was pro-life and a lot of other stuff. He said he wouldn't support legislation against abortion, but he said he personally was pro-life. And these are stances that you're like, this is coming out of the liberal side. I mean, the Democrats are about to make a bid for the midterm, and I think they're going to go centrist to center right to try to win all the people who voted for Trump. And just it boggles my mind, because we're going to get more of this stuff that we're going to talk about today. Oh, should I pull my hair out now, or should I wait till the end of the episode?
I don't know, man. I mean, it's funny. Like, I get upset by politics, obviously, quite a bit. Like it's part of my regiment, and it's part of my up down, and it kind of goes into a little bit of my like weird, crazy depression and stuff like that. But only a couple of times, let's just say over the course of the history, have I actually felt like crying, like an extreme amount. And like,
I'm scared. I am genuinely scared right now of what's going to be happening in the next couple of weeks.
Oh, I agree. And it's kind of funny because, and I kind of want to pull this episode out, but way back 2 years ago, almost, or a year and a half, when 45 got elected, I had the conversation with my kids and all these other things, and I think I cried on air, and it's like, holy crap, like, I'm sitting here, going, this is like, I'm not even able to comprehend this. Like, and the most amazing thing is the people that I have to interact with. And, like, all right, so we can exclude the Facebook side of things for a few minutes here, right? Like, the people on Facebook can be very callous, uncaring and things like that. But it's just the people at work. Now, in fairness, there's a couple of people at work, my boss included. Hopefully he never listens to our show. But, my boss included, like, came to me today. And, like, I know my boss is more is a little more liberal than some of the other people I work with, but I didn't know he was this far. I mean, he like actually came to me, like, closed the door and is like, do you know what's going on right now? Like, and he's in his 50s, and he's sitting here going, this is scary, and this is coming from somebody that I would consider at minimum a neocon, like, or a more liberal libertarian, I guess. And he's in my office saying, hey, did you read this? Yep. Yeah, he's like, if you need to take some time, I understand. He's like, I'm shutting down. I don't know. He's like, if I'm not here on Friday, that's why. I don't know what to do.
I'm thinking it's episode number 57. It was one of our biggest episodes we had. It was called King Trump. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure it was the one right after the election, and we basically dubbed him King Trump, because it wasn't until recently I actually started saying President Trump, because it just I hear it so much that it's turning into a term that I actually say, because for the longest time I refused to even say. I would just say Trump or Donald or whatever. But no,
I don't say it. I say 45 Orange Cheeto Monster. Yeah. I have zero respect, man. I'm sorry. Like, there's just no respect here.
I try not to. It just sometimes it just comes out. Just over time, it just kind of turns into. I mean, listen to NPR and those guys say it all the time, every time. So, anyways, let's talk about some topics. Yeah, that's the buffer, everyone. That's the warning that we're talking hard, to current events, politics in this episode. Next episode, we're gonna have some fun, maybe some E3 stuff in there. It's a little bit late, but it'll be a good time. But this episode's gonna be pure current events.
Yeah. So tonight we begin the episode off talking about something I never thought I'd ever say in my life, and I should send you the meme that somebody sent me earlier. It's actually pretty funny. We're gonna talk about Space Force. And if you, I mean, like, I say this and I laugh. I mean, I guess there's the comedy in that, right? Like, out of all the calamity of the last 3 days, I hear Space Force.
Well, we posted,
and I just think about it and laugh.
I posted on our Instagram page. If anybody wants to check it out on Cellar Door Skeptics, just search it on Instagram. I was watching the thing where Trump was talking about the Space Force thing, and he kept turning his head to the side, and he had self tanner on that was so thick you could see a line in front of his ears. He had an orange circle on his face, and I took a picture of it and I put it on a L'Oreal self tanner picture on Walmart. I couldn't help it. But it was a comical, ridiculous setting, and listening to him say Space Force. And I don't know if you're familiar with the Star Wars thing that the United States was thinking about doing under Reagan and Bush at all.
No, I'm not, but I'm very interested to hear about it.
That's what the Space Force is, kind of like a new iteration of the Star Wars thing. The Star Wars thing was the whole idea that the United States kind of wanted to weaponize our satellite systems and create like a star weapons system, something that could protect us from space or protect space itself. The United States would be like the security force for all of the ISS and International Space Station setups and people in and out. This is when NASA was not blowing up 1977 era space shuttles, and we were the dominant absolute leader in space, and they still wanted to continue doing this. We've lapsed off in China and Russia, and them have been really boosting their space presence. So this is the kind of the comical, pseudo ridiculous response by Trump and his naming squad, which I'm assuming is monkeys rolling die with pictures on them. But this is the new iteration of the whole idea of Star Wars, where we're creating some kind of armed group, team, technology, or just something that monitors and tracks space equipment and space travel through, obviously militaristic means, as opposed to some kind of coalition of countries all agreeing to just not be dicks with guns.
Yeah, that's crazy. I don't know, man. Space Force. I'm sorry. Like, I don't even know what to say sometimes. So they made the announcement this week, right? And they make this announcement, and I have no idea whether he was on script or off script, right? Like, sometimes I can't tell anymore. Did you watch? Did you watch it at all?
Yeah, I don't think anybody really knows exactly what he's going to say. I don't think he has a speechwriter. I don't think they have a teleprompter. And as I said earlier today on Twitter, I genuinely feel sorry for whoever has to take the Trump speech and create those sentences grammatically for the record, because I don't know how you can write them. He pauses, has so many erratic starts and stops. Everything he speaks in is a fragment. I don't know how you would write it down as a paragraph to explain to the world and to in posterity what the heck that guy just said. But he came out and essentially was talking about taking the Air Force's responsibility that they already have for space and just monitoring and everything that the Air Force does for space, and separating those responsibilities into its own separate but equal section to the Air Force that would just be in charge of training and whatever he envisions this Space Force to take care of.
Yeah. And I don't know. I guess it's kind of fun.
You think it's a good idea
to create Space Force? Not when we're separating families. Not when we want to build. Not when we're using families as a leverage to say, "Hey, Democrats, vote Republicans, and let's build this wall and spend a bunch of millions of dollars of our tax money." So no, look, man. There's nothing else out there. The only thing I can think of that Space Force can be used for as leverage, literally, on a military scale, is to create a military advantage by putting us in the atmosphere so that we can murder any nation or anybody that we want to at any time. Like, I cannot think of a better reason, because it's not like he wants to. It's not like Space Corp or Space Force is going to actually go through the motions to discover new worlds. We're not creating like a USS Enterprise where we're going to go out there and say, "Hey, we're going to figure out how to explore this galaxy and live past our livelihood." That's not what we're doing. We're not doing any of that at all. We want to create a military base in the sky, create a military base on the moon. Why? Who are we going to fight in space? Who's out there in space, man? I don't know. I don't believe in ancient aliens. I highly doubt that there's any aliens out there for us to go conquer right now, or anywhere near our galaxy.
Well, Well, I mean, obviously, he's not looking at anything coming into the United States orbit that would be a danger from extraterrestrial. What the entirety of what this is? This is just another way of unilaterally and strong man constraining and controlling the economic growth of other countries. So, what is the number one thing you have to essentially have a fully functioning and modern communication-driven economy? You need satellites, you need communications in space, and if the United States basically holds the key to that, you can restrict. You become the bouncer at the door. You decide who wins and who loses. And the United States is currently doing that with a lot of industries. They've been losing that economic power, and through a lot of geopolitical bad decisions, we're losing the ability to control the situation. And so this is just another area where nobody has total control of the skies as far as space is concerned. And so what they want to do, and this is from Ars Technica, essentially they're saying that they want to ensure peaceful access to geostationary orbit and cislunar space near the moon. So essentially they want to basically be able to control any of the open economic space for satellites so that they can have geosynchronous orbit and any other communication stuff. And then also the direct access to in and out of the moon, because Trump says he wants to go back to the moon. These are things that if we have control over those spaces.
Why does he want to go back to the moon?
Just because he wants to be able to say he did it. Like Trump's idea of doing this stuff is a series of I did it, I get credit for it. And so if he says I created the Space Force, I stopped China from growing its space I guess communications area or whatever, because China and Russia and India have been significantly increasing their presence because the United States isn't launching anymore. We haven't been shooting up anything besides satellites. They don't do manned space missions. Anytime the U.S. astronauts go in, they go in through Russian associations. So like the U.S. is falling behind in that area. This is the place where we could kind of regain our strength and control and create that world superpower control that people like Donald Trump and typical strongmen, pseudo strongmen, people who like that idea of having a top-down authoritarian control scheme, like they love this idea, and right now we're the only ones poised to try to take over that. I personally think that we should do like we did with the UN in after World War II, is we created a global coalition to help protect the rest of the world from ridiculous power-hungry madmen from taking over and trying to control certain things. This is the same thing with inner space and space travel. We need to do a global thing.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. There you go. I was gonna say, why create our own space force? Why not go to the UN and say, all right, he doesn't like the UN. We'll get to that next segment. But
yeah, I know.
Why?
That's the whole thing.
Why don't we do that then? Why are we stuck creating our own force? Why? I mean, for Christ's sake, why don't we bond with somebody else and say, hey, this is what we want to start. What do you want to do? Oh, you like this idea too? Hey, how about these countries? Let's all come together and create our own unified space force.
Because you're not John Lennon, and nobody has the ability to imagine anymore. In all reality, really, it comes down to this: is that Donald Trump isn't interested in creating global coalitions. Like he's not interested. He doesn't think that works, and he doesn't think that benefits his perspective. Like and that is really what it is. So it's the conservative mindset is not one of global coalition, because it takes too long. And in the conservative perspective, a lot of times everything is a zero-sum game. If you listen to Trump's talk about treaties and trade wars and stuff, it's always we'll win, we'll beat you, you'll lose, we can't lose. There's always a winner and a loser. But when you're creating global coalitions, there's no clear winner and no clear loser. Everybody is trying to elevate everyone else, because if everyone does well, it increases the quality of life for the entire planet. But that's a slow game. It's slow, it's difficult, and you have to. If you're rich, you have to give stuff away. You get massive investment return on your investment. It's just like when we fund schools. For every dollar invested in a school, in some cities you get $7 in return, $4 in return. That's a great investment, but it doesn't come back until 18 years later. And a lot of times, the short-term perspective of conservatives, that's just too long. And so we got to do it now, and it's got to be unilateral. I mean, look at what we did with Saddam Hussein. That was unilateral. That was not taking the long road to make sure what you were doing is right. We're going to do it because this is what we want to do. And this is the same thing with the Space Force. It's a unilateral thing, and in the end, it will probably come back to bite us and reduce our standing in the global community. And it's just I don't know how to stop him. I can't do it, man. I can't do it. The midterms is our hope, and hopefully everybody votes there because. If the entire country says stop, maybe somebody will listen.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, I guess I don't disagree with wanting to create a neutral air space inside of space. I guess I don't know how to say that, but
international waters in space.
Yeah. I don't disagree with stopping Russia and China from being able to take over that area. I don't actually disagree with that. In fairness. I just don't think that our money is well spent on this, A, when we have a lot of bigger issues, and B, I don't know, I guess if you actually look into, I mean, there's not a lot of information, but if he's going to create a whole new branch of government, or, branch of military, that's just weird, like, why does that have to be? Why can't it be developed inside of what we currently have? What's the expense to develop a whole new, branch of military? Could it not just be part of the Air Force? They have a space division. Why are we not going back to NASA and saying, hey, maybe we should fund you more, and you can help us create some military arms? Oh, that's right. Nobody wants to fund NASA anymore. But why don't they look at that before we just make it some blatant BS announcement? We're creating a new Space Force. I love Spaceballs, and I can see him as Commander Helmet sometimes. And
he's surrounded by assholes.
He is, and and he's major asshole.
Yeah,
I don't know. Why do we not think about things before we vomit out of our mouths? Sometimes, I guess that's a dumb rhetorical question, but that's how I feel.
There's no real good solution there. I think it's just a short term versus long term thing. I really do, because I mean, if you think about it, like, what if we're gonna create a new branch of the Air Force, split it off to make a Space Force? Well, are they just going to cut the Air Force budget in half? No, the Air Force is going to keep its budget, and we're going to need to appropriate new money. So we just passed a bill to add $1.5 trillion to the debt every year, and we're looking at an economic trade war that could potentially reduce our GDPs pretty significantly and losing something like 200,000 jobs a year as current estimates. So we're going to see a slowdown in our economic growth, which the tax plan that we passed needed 3% or more growth in order to pay for all of the things that it said was going to be paid for by new tax growth. Like, what they're doing is essentially robbing from Peter to pay Paul, and now they want more money for a Space Force. The only place they're going to get that is taking it from things like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. Essentially, we're going to be transferring even more wealth from the poor to the military branch, which would then get funneled to private contractors in the Air Force and the Space Force to build all of this stuff. And who's going to be getting those contracts? Well, all the lobbyists in Washington who told Trump that he should make some kind of Space Force. We're going to see a massive transfer of wealth in the same channels, the same swampy nature that Trump said he was going to be stopping. And all of this is easily predictable. I mean, you can easily follow it as it happens in the future, because there's no way this money is going to show up out of nowhere. And so, like what you said, is basically, why are we doing this? Well, because there's some people telling him that he can make a whole lot of money doing this, or some people are saying they can make a whole lot of money doing this, and they'll help him or whatever. This is self-beneficiaries here. They don't care if they burn the planet down as long as they get a nice pile of money before the Joker lights it on fire.
Exactly. I don't know. I really don't know, my friend. Go ahead.
Space Force. Lasers from the sky. We're all going to fucking die.
Go get your passport right now. This is the endorsement from Cellar Door Skeptics.
Worst commercial ever.
Worst commercial ever. We're all going to die. That's what it feels like. That's what this episode feels like.
This sounds like a depressing local car salesman's commercial. Go now! Find a hole!
This wacky inflatable salesman will lead you to Canada. Get out, get out, get out now. And it's not because of Space Force, folks. It's definitely not because of Space Force. But if you would like to support Cellar Door Skeptics, make sure you head over to iTunes. Give us a rating on iTunes. All the ratings you can give. The more we get, the happier Chris Hanna bees, and the more our episode will trend on iTunes, especially like this episode. You know, when we talk about King Trump, that was a pretty important episode in my opinion. I feel this one is kind of the same. I almost feel like labeling this King Trump takes a deuce. I mean, that's almost what this feels like. But if you would like to, head over to iTunes, give us a rating, go over to Spreaker, you can download us, you can follow us, add us to your local podcatcher, whatever floats your boat. Anything to help support the show and get viewership out to those who may need to hear two white guys complain about Trump and the way our government is going to shit.
Because there's no other podcast with two white guys. We're the only one.
We're making white guy podcasts great again.
Oh man, God,
Jesus, that was bad. I apologize in advance for the drinking and the Trump.
Yeah.
Reference.
Well, in all reality, though, like, I mean, we try the best we can to offer, like, a non-biased perspective. Yeah, we're pretty much middle-class white dudes, but we really do try to take an empathetic response and position to all this stuff. Like, and if anybody thinks anything that we're saying is wrong, call us out on it. I want to learn. I had a great conversation with a bunch of people about something horrible that happened with a bunch of racist people spray painting cars in Clio, Michigan, and the people that are just skeptical about whether something actually happened. And you know, there's some really great conversations about, you know, like I don't question the victim right out of the gate. That's not what I do. And so like, but you know, having conversation instead of attacking and yelling at each other, we talked about it, and I got their perspective, and we, you know, politely disagreed with each other. But like, our show tries to do that. So if you politely disagree and think that Trump creating a space force is an amazing idea, or on the next topic where the Human Rights Council is basically excommunicating us, or we're killing it ourselves, either way, if you think that's just a great idea, we would love to hear your perspective as to why.
Yeah. And it's funny, so on Twitter today, of all things,
something happened on Twitter?
It did. Lots of things happen on Twitter.
Nothing ever happened on Twitter.
I don't know. I don't pay attention. But
I think we're old. I think we're old. We don't have enough. Like I can't pay attention to Twitter. It's too short. It's too fast. It doesn't sit still long enough for me. I can't do it. I need more than 140 characters, and I can't follow a 9,000 post thread. I just can't do it.
So America has again made the news. Again, ironically. And today it's been announced that the United States is going to leave the Human Rights Council.
And that's even possible?
Didn't know that. How about this? I knew there is a Human Rights Council that existed.
Yeah, they're awesome.
Never once did I know that A, you could leave it, B, that you had to have a press conference about leaving it, and C, you basically had to say, you didn't do what I said to do, therefore, big middle finger, see you, have a nice time. Like, we're that important enough to demand people listen to us. So I don't know.
We rage quit the UN Human Rights Council like a 12-year-old getting owned in a first-person shooter. That's what we did today.
Yeah.
Basically. We just said, you guys aren't doing what we want to do, and you're not paying attention to people we said are bad, so we quit, and we're going to do it on our own. So, okay, I guess. I really honestly I did not think that there was any way someone could look at the political ramifications of doing something like quitting a United Nations Human Rights Council and say, you know what, there's going to be too much political blowback. It'll look bad if we say we're quitting the biggest coalition of countries on the planet trying to stop human rights violations.
And so here's the funny thing. If you go to the UN Human Rights Twitter page, and this is what brought my attention to this, right? They posted, and I guess it's nice of them, right? You know, it's nice of them to be nice in their posts. You know, it's not like They're like, look, they rage quit. The Americans are idiots.
Look
They
at
just
those
say
stupid fools.
They say, in today's world, the U.S. should be stepping up and not stepping back. And that's what they're saying. They're saying, instead of criticizing us and saying, hey, you're pieces of crap, they're saying, do you understand you can make a bigger difference helping us than you can opposing us? And that's essentially what our country did today. Our country made a statement that says, hey, we're going to oppose you now. We no longer want to support you.
We're going to do it unilaterally. This is to me, the critique is exactly the same as the Space Force thing in the last segment. The United States decided to go at it unilaterally instead of try to work in the coalition and try to work with everyone. Say, because the U.S. has basically said, well, you guys aren't doing anything for Venezuela. They're doing terrible things with human rights. Iran is doing all kinds of horrible stuff. And we know the U.S. loves to paint Iran with a horrible brush. But, I mean, I would point to Saudi Arabia. The United States loves Saudi Arabia, and the United States blocks anyone from doing anything to stop the human rights violations in Saudi Arabia. And the president met and became buddy pen pals in I'm pretty sure he played beer pong with Kim Jong-un last weekend. So, I mean, that guy there, that is the most repressive state in the entire world. And he said, this guy's great. I love the fact that all of his people sit up for him when he's talking. I wish my people would do that. Like, that is what I mean, if you're going to criticize and critique the United Nations Human Rights Council for doing all of those things and ignoring this stuff, the United States has a terrible human rights record, not specifically in our country, but the things that we support and the people that we help. So we can critique ourselves just as much as we can, but the best thing to do on that is to tell the entire UN Human Rights Council, listen, we all need to get together and we really need to focus our plan. We need to make sure North Korea isn't putting people in prison just for saying they don't like Kim Jong-un. We need to make sure that people in Venezuela aren't being killed because they want to decentralize the economy from oil, and we need to make sure that Iran isn't going to be going right back to putting people in prison for saying they don't want to build nuclear weapons to shoot at Israel. Like, all of those things are things that we could be working with the world to stop. And what do? We said, no, we're going to do it on our own. Screw you guys. I'm going home.
Yeah, it's like Cartman. Exactly. It's like Cartman. Like Trump and Cartman. Maybe they predicted this before. I guess, I don't know. You know, it's funny because they had the episodes with Mr. Garrison becoming president and being very Trump-like, right, this year?
Well,
but in reality, maybe it's Cartman that we should be more, like, concerned about. That's, like, more Trump's behavior, you know?
Well, they picked out Mel Gibson right out of the gate. Like, they knew he was a piece of garbage right from the start. I remember, give me back my $18. That episode on South Park was amazing. But I would bet you if someone knew it, if anybody does know any place in South Park where they predicted the future, because I know The Simpsons have done it a bunch of times with predicting like Donald Trump doing all kinds of really weird and crazy things, and then they actually happened. Because Simpsons is really good at looking at social politics and geopolitics. So I don't know. I just, in the end, really, what we've done here is decide to go it on our own, and like a stubborn backpacker in Yellowstone, we're gonna probably have to be saved by some guy in a helicopter who really knows what he's doing.
Yeah, and I guess I will say this. You know, one of the things I think is kind of important to talk about here, right, is if you think about it, you know, I don't agree with our global interactions as they are, right? We're very lone wolfish when it comes to going to war. We're very lone wolfish when it comes to enacting and saying, hey, that's a human rights violation, therefore we need to get involved in it. We have been since I've been 18.
Yeah.
Since 2001, we have been.
Yeah, since Reagan.
So, but I'm just saying, is like, so the U.S. policy, and this has been supported on both sides, man. I mean, this is not just a conservative ideology. This has also been part of the liberal politics. This is something that I've actually opposed since 2001. Like, I guess I've always been somewhat anti-war, and I've been pretty anti-interventionalist in the means of using force to intervene. But the big thing here is, if you think about what Trump's doing, this isn't anything that should really be that surprising to us, other than he just says, I could do whatever I want. I'm rolling the dice. What's the worst that can happen? I mean, I'm a sexual harasser. I openly make fun of people with disabilities. Oh, I'm openly racist. I openly support racist organizations. I openly support racist individuals running for political positions. I mean, what's the worst I can do? If I pull out of the Human Rights Council, in fairness to America's belief set, we should be the larger police force, and people should give money to us and back what we do. That's how America acts, and that's what I dislike about America, probably more than anything else, is that we act like we own the world and everybody should kowtow to us, instead of wanting to work as a fucking group of people trying to get things done. And I will admit, Trump has a great point in the fact that the Human Rights Council isn't doing anything about, these other countries. They're allowing them to sit on the border. But the bigger question is should we take a hardline stance? Can you demonstrate that a hardline stance with these with these countries is going to change how they interact with their the politics with where they're at? Right? I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not, because I've never done that research. So you would almost have to be able to demonstrate that other country, excluding these other countries is actually going to make the world more humanistic in a sense. Because the irony here is we left because, of that. But at the exact same time, what are we doing right now? Separating from families at the borders, which we've never done before. Well, that's one of the things we just were accused by the Human Rights Council of being very unhumanistic. Irony.
Probably one of the reasons why they decided to pull out, because they were getting criticized for this policy that they've got for the new policy at the border, which it's not really a new policy. It's specifically they are directly enforcing the policy, and this is just part of the legal ramifications of directly putting people in jail who come across the border illegally and immediately prosecuting them. But in the end, what we're looking at here is the United States acting unilaterally and leaving the UN forces. And we've looked at doing things with the entire coalition, through the UN, through sanctions and all that kind of stuff. I mean, look at the pressure we put on Iraq and the pressure we put on Iran, the pressure we put on North Korea and Russia, and sanctions against China. I mean, all of these things work, but they only work if the entire world is in on it. If there's anybody who is sneaking stuff around the corner, if anybody who's helping stuff through the bottom, and it doesn't work as good. And so we need to create a uniform and global collective to try to pressure those countries in. Because let's say the United States sends a delegation out of Venezuela. Tell them, listen, guys, you're doing a terrible job. We are going to boycott. We're going to block. We're going to attack every bit of your economy. You will be completely held paralyzed. And Venezuelans will be like, you're only about 15% of our economy. We're going to completely leave that and go any place and everywhere else we can go. And we'll be just fine. We'll survive. But if the United States goes in with the full backing of the UN Human Rights Council and the UN main countries and says, listen, 60% of the world economic force is saying we're not going to help you out unless you start behaving better, there's a better chance that that's going to happen. It's the long game. It really is the long game, because we can do the threats of military force, and those are going to get quick responses, or they're going to have equal. We're looking at Newton's. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction, just like North Korea. Once they had a nuke, then we're looking at an actual equal and opposite reaction. But up until that point, North Koreans basically completely and totally annihilated all their people and took every penny they had and put it into nuclear force. And that still wasn't enough to stop them from growing up and becoming, what is now a nuclear power. And so there's a bunch of different things that have happened in the past. But one thing that we know for certain isn't going to work is leaving a coalition and doing whatever you want. That has not and will not ever work to force a country to do exactly what you want. So the UN was created after World War II to try to stop this geopolitical tit-for-tat stuff. Because that's some of the stuff that started World War I was a trade war. Massive, crazy trade tariffs all over the place, a global economic crash, and then you had fascism and right-wing authoritarians take over, and then we started World War I. I mean, I'm scared that that's going to happen, and this kind of stuff here, leaving these coalitions that were created to stop blatant human rights violations and stuff like that. This is the buffer we had to keep us from having another Nazi party taking over. And I'm afraid that these kinds of things could be happening in Italy again. And what's the other country that was doing some of this stuff? not Greece. I don't know. There's a few other countries in Europe that are Hungary, and some of those countries that are Poland is really bad right now. But it's scary, and the U.S. could be trying to mitigate some of that danger, but it seems like we're actually exacerbating it.
Exactly, and you kind of wonder, here, are we going to, what are we gonna do,
It's just gonna get worse.
Yeah, I mean, and again, like I said, I mean.
Midterms, people.
I understand. Yeah, exactly. And I understand the logic of, how do we get to the point where we can address these atrocities? And I don't disagree that we should. But the problem I have is knee-jerk reactions when it comes to this type of international politics. I have a problem with. And I think that we need to look at it in a different manner that allows us to create a more educated discussion.
We're playing chess, not checkers. Yeah. We're playing chess, not checkers. And I don't care anyone who says that Trump is playing three-dimensional chess is a psychopath.
Yeah. I would agree. So, I don't know. But if you, again, support Cellar Door Skeptics, you can head over to our Patreon page right now. You can subscribe for $1 an episode. You can help support paying to keep the episode or the podcast on the air, as well as
tell us what we got wrong.
And tell us what we got wrong. Tell Hannah what he got wrong. Only tell me not this week. This week's a bad week to tell me what I got wrong, because we'll probably have a long conversation about it. If that's what you want, hey, come join us. But, you could join our Patreon. We donate to a charity every year. It's a thing. And we're very happy with what we do. Essentially, we make no money. The whole podcast comes out of our pocket. And like I said, in the long run, anything that everybody donates to Patreon, Hannah and I donate above and beyond at the end of the year. So this is kind of just a labor of love for us. But if you would like to help support the show, help make it so that we can reach more people, head over to Patreon.com/CellarDoorSkeptics.com and support us with no more than $1 an episode. Or if you really want, you can donate $10 an episode, whatever floats your boat. With that being said, we're going to the heaviest topic for tonight. And if we were nice, we would do like that little "and now this" part of the show, right? Where we would do something comical, something funny, something to break up the tension, something to make you laugh. But I'll be honest, like, the space part of the episode was the most comical I can be tonight.
No, there's no happy ending to this. This is not a massage parlor in Flint next to the airport. This is not going to end well.
I can even tell you that my scotch has ran out, and I've had to switch to bourbon because I drank all the scotch through the first part of the episode. Unfortunately, I should have saved it, I guess, for this part. Because, I was all like, hey, Christopher Hitchens, I feel Christopher Hitchens-ish tonight, And then I thought, well, that fucker was kind of conservative, wasn't he? And then I'm sitting here going, man, maybe he would support this. Now that I think about this.
He was a bit of a centrist. He would probably like the criticisms of the UN and everything, because throughout everything he really had a problem with a lot of the lackadaisical organization on the global concept. As far as I know, he was much more hands-on because he was a global reporter. He was a political reporter who went out and did stuff. A swashbuckling journalist, much like, the late great Anthony Bourdain. Like, he was a guy who went to a place and experienced life there and brought something back from that, and it changed him and changed the way he talked. And so, seeing the rest of the world and seeing things that none of us have seen up close and in person, you can see there's some urgency. There's some stuff that really does need to be. We can't sit and talk about how great it is from suburban America. You need to get out into the fields of Cambodia and see the people who've lost limbs because they're stepping on old mines from Vietnam still. Sometimes shit needs to get moving. And I think that, Hitchens would probably have been a little bit more of a faster mover than a lot of the current, massive political strategist who basically make a lot of decisions when it comes to the global decision making. This is kind of the frustration that Trump has been saying about, you guys aren't doing crap. Well, yeah, I know they're not, and they need to be pushed a little bit. But rage quitting and stomping around like a toddler isn't the way to get them to do stuff.
Yeah. But tonight we have to discuss, and there you go, I sigh.
Domestic
affairs, taking kids at our border.
Yeah.
And there's there's so much to unpack here. I mean, this is a whole episode of itself, and we don't want to spend 4 hours having this conversation because you've probably been inundated so much lately.
Yeah, it's
this.
Everywhere.
But
so
the problem,
want to bring our perspective in.
Yeah, exactly. And the problem that I have is not that I think my voice is some big added value, right? Not that I feel even Hannah has any value to add here. I don't feel we're some unique experience. I feel the need to add my voice to the crowd. I feel the need to express the fact that I need others to add your voice to the mob, because at this point I don't feel we can remain silent. And the anarchist in me and the part of me that wants a political turmoil to the point where is going to create another civil war is because that's how I feel right now. And it's kind of funny. Before the show started, and I'm going to pick on Hannah a little bit. Before the show started, we were talking about this, and Hannah's telling me how exhausted he is, and I feel the same way. I mean, I've literally had to decombobulate myself and leave the Facebooks and the Twitters and the Instagrams alone for a while. I've had to disengage with family just because I don't want to start a war with my family, and I know some in my family agree with me and some do not. And then we're talking immediate family. We're not talking like in my house. I don't have to worry about it. My wife and we literally just look at each other and cry. I mean, that's how we feel right now, But on the opposite side of things, I have some other family members that I know don't support the same thing. I know who are diehard Trump fans that are not going to be able to accept this. And the problem here, right, is that I feel that we need to start speaking out, because the anarchist in me almost just wants to watch the United States burn, because I'm at the point where I'm saying, when is enough going to be enough? When are we going to get to the point where we are disgusted by this regime? And, at the beginning, like I said, before the episode started, Hannah, he brought out this discussion where I was like, he's like, well, maybe this is how Republicans felt about Obamacare. And I'm going to pick on you a little bit. Not
I'm trying to find a time when it could be comparable. I can't think of anything where the other side was winning, not so much winning, but doing as much as they wanted whenever they wanted.
And I agree with you on that. But the only problem I have with that analysis is, and maybe that's not a false analysis, right? But to me, the problem is if Republicans and the GOP felt this way about Obamacare, all that tells me is that they're more heartless, more unmoralistic, more party bias, wanting to buy into this center or this Republican regime over people's lives, over humanism. That's all that tells me is if that's the low point, for fuck's sake, if that's the low point for these individuals, is that they got to be this that they're sitting in their houses crying over fucking Obamacare because that means their fucking insurance is going to go up and is going to make it a little bit harder for them. If that's the fucking case, let me tell you, folks, that I'm not done here. I'm not done sitting in my house. I'm ready for the revolution. I'm ready to bear arms. I'm ready to take up a fucking gun and march down to Texas and say, hey, we're going to take over these facilities. You're going to fucking stop doing this, and let's start a fucking war. Because if you can justify separating a child, whether this was a law for the last 20 years or not, if you can justify doing this in your administration, all this tells me is you have no morals. And then to have the fucking audacity literally to say, I don't even understand this, but to literally have the audacity to say, hey, you know what, maybe this will motivate Democrats to work with us on getting a wall put up. All that tells me is that if you were smart and this is an actual political mover, you have the moralistic fiber of a snake slithering through the grass, looking at a human and biting them out of spite because they're in your fucking way. Fuck yourself, and fuck anybody that wants to support this bullshit.
The whole argument they're using, that as leverage, saying, well, we're torturing all these young children. You guys should really come to the table and you should make a deal so we can take care of, like, as heartless
It's
as
blackmail,
it is.
man. It's gaslighting.
Well, but even that, it isn't that. If you're going to take it out, like, if I am a political strategist who cares not for anybody's well-being, cold-hearted Kevin Spacey on House of Cards asshole, and I hear the Republicans make that deal, I say no deal. You guys eat this shit until the midterms. You eat children on TV in cages until the midterm. This is the worst decision they could have done to take care of this kind of thing during an election year. I mean, they're creating internment camps. George Takei came on Facebook and Twitter earlier. He and his parents were in internment camps during World War II. And he said, at least when I was in an internment camp, when I was in a concentration camp in the United States during World War II, I wasn't taken from my parents. He came out and said that the things that they're doing now are worse than what they did during the Asian scare during World War II. I mean, there is some serious symbolic, issue here that there is no running from if you are a Republican and even remotely centrist, and looking at as far as I know, it's something like 77% of the people in the country in a recent Quinnipiac poll said that what they're doing is wrong. Like, not even like a slight majority, a vast majority of the people in this country think that what is happening right now at the border is morally reprehensible, and they will come to bear in the midterms. And if the Democrats come to the table and make a deal, yes, it's the right thing to deal. Because whatever we can do to save kids, that's the right thing to do. But politically, they should let the Republicans eat their, fall on this sword. And I don't know what to do, because the short term fix could give Republicans more power, but I cannot for the life of me think of any way that it could be okay for a Democrat to sit aside and say, no, I'm not going to take this deal. I'm not going to do something with you horrible, horrible people if it'll help save the 10,000 kids or 2,000 kids or whatever that are in essentially in concentration camps right now. Like, I don't know the answer to it, but I do know that this is a moral quandary that should not be happening. This is unbelievable in what is considered a first world country. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that happens in places that are not on the Human Rights Council.
Exactly.
This is us completely devolving from a first world into a middle ground, murky, non-legit democracy. I mean, this is a major step in the backwards direction for any kind of respect in the United States.
Exactly. It's kind of funny. I posted, you posted this thing yesterday. That said, conclusive proof that Trump's policy to separate children from their families at the border is not democratically instituted, and we're going to talk about that tonight, because that's my focus. Because I not only do I want to shut down those of you who think that it's okay to discuss this and say it's a law, therefore we should enforce it. I want to shut you down. I want to discuss that part of it, because that's what angers me the most.
Yeah.
That anger, I mean, to an extent that I'm at the point where if you unfriend me, I don't give a, I'll call you a fucking piece of fucking garbage, and I don't care. Unfriend me, blacklist me. I'm literally, Hannah, at the point where I feel like fucking taking screenshots and links of people's profiles who support this decision and putting it in a fucking public album and saying, hey, remember these people. Remember this, because if it gets worse, these are the people you cannot fucking trust. And if it gets better, these are the people that we should be ostracizing. And, my wife and I, argue about this a little bit, because my wife and I don't always agree on public humiliation, right? Like people that do different things, and should we ruin their livelihoods? I guess I've watched a lot of atrocities happen. I've watched people, land-based, trans individuals, LGBT people, and I want to get them to lose their jobs, to lose their livelihoods. Right? I want that.
Stuff, have you seen the stuff they're doing? There's people who are collecting profiles of people who work at ICE.
They are. And guess what? LinkedIn shut it down. All these people are shutting this shit down, man. It was posted on Medium this morning. Within 3 hours, it was taken down. We don't know why.
That information has been soaked up. I guarantee it's in a database somewhere.
It is.
The whole point of that is basically, that is out there if you're going to be supporting it. I definitely agree. When someone makes something like absolutely disgusting on a post of mine, I don't block them. I take a picture of their screenshot and I put it on my wall, and I show people this is what this person just said to me. Like, I really just throw it out there because in my entire time on social media, I don't think in more than a couple of times was I so outlandish that I actually deleted my post. It's happened a few times where I was just being a dick, and I had the ability to do that, but it was never that bad. And like I honestly cannot think of any time when I was that bad to the point where someone would take a picture of what I said and post it around like that. And I think that's fine. That is absolutely fine. That people should be held accountable for things that they say online, unless they have a fake profile. Then report them, do whatever. But like, this is a big deal. This is a really big deal that we should be looking to changing what's happening in this country, especially on this topic.
Yeah. And I posted your thing, right? I have probably over 100 people on my Facebook page that easily identify as Republican. I probably have more than 100, but I have at least 50 to 100 people that have voted for Trump and support Trump, right? I know that.
Good. You have that diversity in yours. I don't have that much diversity in my profile.
Because unless you are a harasser or a troll, I don't ban you. So, like,
yeah, I don't either.
Even that Nathan guy, there's a Nathan guy that I had on the show 2 years ago or a year and a half ago when Trump was getting elected, right? And he actually ran for the Trump campaign. And I'll be honest with you, do not follow him if you have issues with that. Like, he is not somebody I recommend. He is not going to give you a clean argument. But in fairness, he doesn't use troll-like tactics very often. He does every once in a while, and I call him out for it, and usually he either stops or retracts his statements. Yeah. But in fairness, again, he doesn't have good arguments at all. That dude has horrible arguments.
Yeah, but at least he's not being like a troll. He's
exactly.
just like, he's arguing. His arguments are bad, but he's just a guy arguing.
Exactly. And I will not ban him from my page. And I've had somebody private message me more than one time, say, "Hey, why are you allowing him to spew hatred on your timeline?" It's like, are you arguing against him? Do you see me comment against him? Do you see other people attacking him? I mean, look, man, in fairness, all these other people are going against him. You're right. I could isolate him from my Facebook page and move on. And when he becomes abusive, I do that. Like, he calls somebody, he calls somebody a libretard, right? And I messaged him. I said, you can either remove that post or I'm going to delete your comment. You can pick what you want to do, but I want it removed from my timeline because I don't mind you criticizing people in a fair light, but you need to get off your high horse and stop using slurs to do it. And I said, I'll do the same for you. If somebody calls you a religitard, I'll do the exact same thing. Like,
yeah,
I'm not going to accept that on anybody's behalf. And it's kind of funny because, about a month and a half later, he's like, hey, these people are literally criticizing me with slurs. And so then I went on there and I was like, hey, you guys need to stop this. Give him good arguments or get the fuck off my page.
The people that are supporting a lot of this separate your family stuff, like, their arguments are absolutely terrible. And then when you criticize them, they go on these crazy, crazy places. One of the best places that I think, or worst places that I think anybody who is supporting this has gone, Jeff Sessions took the biblical nature of law to separate. He said separating the immigrant children. He cited the Apostle Paul in the clear and wise command in Romans 13 to obey the laws of government because God has ordained them on the purpose of order. Sessions said orderly and lawful processes are good in themselves and protect the weak and lawful. And then Sarah Sanders basically immediately that same day said it's very biblical to enforce the law. I've been arguing with people all day long about this. It's like, well, Jesus was prosecuted by the Romans, right? He was killed by the Jews and the Romans because he wasn't following the law. So did God create that government, or is that just like, a weird anomaly? And then the other question is, if you look at the book and saying that everything that was dictated in the Bible is good, then the book of Psalms, happy is the one who seizes your infants and dashes them against the rocks. Yeah, it checks out. It is quite biblical, actually, to attack children and use them as leverage to punish parents who are doing things that you don't like and that you see as enemies. That sounds like a very biblical thing to do. I was just under the impression that the United States was a secular country, that separation of church and state was important because things like this wouldn't happen, because we all know about religious atrocities, but you don't hear a lot about cases where somebody took a humanistic approach and somehow that turned into torture.
Exactly. You just that's how I feel. I feel like the Hulk all of a sudden, like I get energized. I could be shit-faced and I'm still going to have twice the amount of energy for this. So before we go any farther, I want to stop for 30 seconds and this is only relevant, and that's why I'm going to say it real quick, and then we're going to move on. This is only literally relevant for, the next couple of days, probably maybe a week. There is, and I've posted the link in the description, it is literally the top link for this section. And yes, we break our links up into sections on what we talk about. There, you can go and register for a webinar that's going to happen tomorrow, Wednesday. What day is it today, Hannah? I don't know what the date is.
Today's the 20th.
So Wednesday, June 20th, there is a noon webinar for any lawyer friends or any lawyers that want to actually participate in going down and fighting this immigration thing and going and helping families so they can stop being separated. There is literally going to be a huge effort by other lawyers to do this, and they're going to help educate you. So the link is right into the description. Thank you to Rebecca for pointing this out. But essentially, right now, 2,100 lawyers have already volunteered to help immigrant families affected by the current border crisis. More than 1,400 lawyers are registered to attend tomorrow's webinar. Will you be one of them? Now, let's move on. Because, again, that's only relevant for this part of the segment. But what's relevant is the discussion that I wanted to have about policy, right? So what's happening right now is this is atrocious. We could talk about all day long about all the people we have to discuss this. We could talk about the Facebook issue, and I don't want to do that right now because I've probably had more than 500 conversations on Facebook in the last week. And like you, I'm very tired. I'm very depressed. I'm struggling from having to deal with this. But I want to press on because I'm at the point where I feel, like I told you guys earlier, I feel at the point of revolution. I feel at the point where it's like we need to go down to ICE detention centers with guns and point them at the officials down there and say, you're going to let these people out and you're going to figure out a better way because I don't know what else to do. And I'm not advocating violence, but I'm saying I'm telling everybody, like, we're
get
at
the
this
pitchforks
point,
out.
man.
Yeah, get the pitchforks out and, really get involved. But there's an issue to that is that I can't think of something that would make a gun-toting Second Amendment 3%er Donald Trump MAGA hat wearing guy happier than seeing a bunch of liberals marching at an ICE center with guns. That is the situation that they dream about. They masturbate to that scenario. They would actually get to fire their weapons into a crowd of liberals trying to free Mexicans and Latin Americans from a detention center. They can't like the guys who are like hardcore immigration nerds that like total attack human rights and as far as anybody coming in the United States for asylum. They love that idea and they hope that more people. I
get that, Hannah, but let me paint a picture for you a little bit. And maybe this is, again, maybe this is my anxiety and my paranoia, mixed with my extreme anger at the situation, right? But I'm telling you right now is, think about it this way, right? If we don't do something, and I'm not advocating we all take up arms and march down there and start killing people or threatening to kill people. I'm not advocating that. That's not part of Cellar Door Skeptics. You can take that out on Chris Tanner. But I am sitting here saying, hold on a fucking second, because what's happening to me feels like we are creating a government allowance for systematic racism to allow for people to separate children based on an archaic law that we randomly decided to enforce this year. It's not been enforced since 2002 when the law was created. And the law does not actually say a damn thing about separating children from parents. Now, what I want to do is I want to say, hey, you're right. They might get off on that. That might be their fantasy. But if you take a few of them with you, and if it's what it comes to is the fact that we need to start taking care of this, we need to start a revolution to the point where we're saying, hey, the government no longer serves me. The government's raping me and abusing me and violating minorities all over the place. At some point, Hannah, we have to say, hey, we're going to draw lines and we're going to draw sides. Do you want to step on the side that takes action? Do you want to stay in the middle and be neutral and just say, I like to do something, but I'm going to bitch about it on my podcast? Or do you want to be somebody that's on the far right that just basically says, whatever, this is we got to obey the laws? I'm telling you, I'm on the teetering point of this is no longer a discussion point where we can vote to change things. I get it. We should vote to change things. Yep. But I'm at the point where I'm saying, hey, we need to look at where it is. And I'll be honest, I've got 2.5 weeks off of work. Some of me's tempted to buy a plane ticket and go down there and stand in front of the ICE facilities. And there's a wonderful video that came out. Yeah. And these people are blocking the barricades to separate the ICE people from going home or going to their hotels or going to their family, right?
I saw that. They were preventing them from either getting into work or leaving work.
Exactly. They're using private property like Tesla, this Tesla thing, to get out of these things. That's a nonviolent protest.
And that's the way we should do it. It should be, obstruction and making things difficult or whatever.
But I'm gonna challenge you a minute though, Hannah. I guess I'm diverting this. I'm gonna challenge you. What are you gonna do if it doesn't do anything? What are you gonna do if they continue to separate tens of thousands of children? Are you gonna wait till November till the election happens? Is that what we should all do? Should we all just wait till November 11th? Or whenever the hell our elections happen, or do we need to go down there and take care of things? Because this is not just happening a little bit, and this is not just happening on a small scale, my friend. This is starting to escalate on a larger scale. And I know the media blows some things out of proportion, percentage-wise. But I'm telling you, this is not happening on this low scale, under 1% proportion. This is happening on a major scale in America. This is defining human rights in America, just like it did with slavery. Just like it did when we freed slaves but wouldn't give them rights. It's kind of funny. Black people have been telling us for years now, hey, wake up, America's racist. Hello?
Yeah.
And guess what? Now us white people are finally waking up going, hold on, is it too late? Are you going to just are you telling us that we should just sit here and be bystanders and go vote in the next election?
Well, to be honest with you, what it takes is something in between. Like, anybody who has the means and the ability and the finances to be able to go do something like that, and on top of that, anybody who has the ability to do something locally. So, like, it doesn't have to be you going across the country to a place to protest. If you get involved locally and go to Lansing, let's say, and get involved with some of the protests that happened there, because there were Me Too marches for Michigan in Lansing that were important, and there were tons of people that were there. Those things are necessary. And so if you don't have the means, like, I don't make much money. My wife is currently not working because we just had a kid. We have 2 kids, and I cover my bills. We save a couple bucks, and we do a decent job. But, in order for me to really take time off, it would essentially drive my business into the ground. I would not be able to. I'm working 70, 80 hours a week. If I don't do that, my company goes under. My livelihood goes under. And there's a lot of people who are really in that dire strait. They're the middle class who are working 60, 70, 80 hours a week. And if they leave, they take off, like their lives are seriously affected. So what happens is, what do those people do? What are the people who would love to be armchair activists, but will want to do a little bit more? And I mean, it really does come down to getting involved with your local politics and communicating with your senators and representatives. I mean, I can't tell you, I've sent probably 15 or 20 emails, and maybe 3 or 4 of them I got a real response back. I got a real email. And this feeling of self-gratification that you get from doing something along those lines and really questioning the people that represent you. Like, my representative, Huizinga, in my district, is an absolute garbage bag, and I do everything I can to question him in every place I can, and that is the limit. Besides my donations I give to the Foundation Beyond Belief, but also groups like the Freedom from Religion Foundation, I haven't been able to give to, but that's one of the groups that I want to do, and potentially could be a major group for our donation for this year's charity for Cellar Door Skeptics, which is part of my what I give back. And so, like, I can't do the pitchfork thing in the streets because my company doesn't allow it. Essentially, if I do, because I'm a small business owner, I can't take that kind of time off, man. It would just kill it. So what I do is the best I can is maybe to do something in Lansing or whatever. And like, in all reality, like, as much as a pitchfork revolution is an awesome idea, a major blue wave blowout and support and donation to your Democratic and to your liberal lobbying groups in November is going to be your best bang for your buck. As much as saving people in these detention centers is something that needs to be done immediately. It really does. But Trump has the super majority, dude. It's a really hard fight.
You're right. It is. So, fair enough.
I don't. But
Let's-
basically,
let's-
one thing I really wanted to do just before we go any further is a friend of mine, Brian Dunnigan. He's a guy that's he's in Tennessee. He's a lawyer, and he was saying that the right wing argument on this is that this is the law that's on the books. We're just enforcing it. It's a little different than that. See, the problem is that this crossing the border illegally is only a misdemeanor. It's an equivalent Class B misdemeanor in Tennessee, which is where he actually argues in front of the Tennessee Supreme Court. These are examples of Class B misdemeanors: littering, disorderly conduct at a funeral, cellaring lottery tickets to a minor, possession of moonshine still. Do you see us taking people's kids away for littering? That's what, if you cross the border illegally into the United States, that is the severity of your punishment. It's the same as littering. That's what these punishments should be. Is this not an egregious overuse of power, separating children from families, and what is obviously and completely and totally a terrorist tactic, state terrorism towards people seeking asylum and trying to cross the border, to scare them away from coming into this country for what is legally on our books, no different than throwing a cheeseburger wrapper out of your window? That is a real question, and that is something that basically breaks down and debunks the Republican argument as to we're just enforcing the law, because that would be the same thing as like, well, you got an MIP, so you're going to jail for 5 years. That's the severity. That's the overreaction that they're doing for this, and that's why the entirety of what they're doing, this massive instantaneous prosecution of people who break the law and come into the country illegally, is legally questionable. I mean, their argument is kind of sort of terrible.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, there's a there's a post, and I put the link in the description, and if we need to, if they somehow ban this person's Facebook page, we'll post it in a blog, right? Essentially, this came from a lawyer, right? And they talk about what's happening, what was piloted. I mean, and it's huge, right? So they piloted a version of this, and there's documents of this, right? Back in January and February. They have a zero tolerance policy where everyone who enters or attempts to enter the U.S. without authorization will be charged with a crime violating 8 U.S.C. 1325A. So I want to make it clear that there is a pseudo law, we'll call it, right? It's not this law that says separate families. It's not this law that says you must put people in jail. And we all know. Here's the funny part. Everybody is sitting around saying, "Well, what about this law? Do you understand what this law does?" And blah 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 blah. And it's a law. We need to accept this. But I'm saying is, hold on a second. There's things they call discretion, my friend. Lawyers, prosecutors, law enforcement, everybody has discretion. Look, I'm a white guy that did not get arrested for driving down the road, slowing down and yelling, "Fuck you, pig," to an officer while driving by. No reason, and I didn't get arrested. But a black guy driving by speeding at 5 miles an hour over is pulled over, illegally searched, and shot, right? There is discretion, obviously. Discretion off the boards. And so whether there's a law or there's a statement or something that has happened back in 2002, that is true. But it doesn't say separate families. It doesn't say you must arrest. It just gives a very basic thing that says there's up to 6 months in jail that can happen. Well, of course, we all know when you put somebody in jail or in prison, what that means is that you get separated from others. We know that. So the problem is, though, and this is where I have the biggest problem, is that if you were coming across the border with your family, seeking asylum, you were not jailed, nothing was happening to you. They would put you through an interrogation process. You would have to be interviewed. You would have to go through a whole conversation about the circumstances. You would sometimes be given a good attorney and sometimes be given a crap attorney, and you would be allowed to be around your family, right?
Yeah.
But that's not what's happening right now. What's happening right now is you're saying, you came across, there's a law, we're going to enforce it. It was not enforced for over 16 years.
Yeah.
16 fucking years. Nobody's enforced this law. Now you want to enforce it. And so the difference becomes is we can sit here and talk about, okay, well, why is it being enforced?
Well,
What's
it's being
the
immediately
difference?
enforced. It was enforced, but they would let the whole family stay together and wait until they had their court date and then whatever. And so like in that sunshine or sunset period, that people would just disappear. They would get into the country and then they would just disappear and they would never show up for their court case. So they're immediately prosecuting. And so like you came over illegally, you immediately go to jail. Do not collect $200. You will be in court. And when they get these people into court, it's like a banana republic. There's 60 guys in jumpsuits in a courtroom. There's nobody watching this because there's no room. There's too many people that are actually being tried. All these people, it's like, are you guys all guilty? And it was like, ah! And then they basically said, yes, you came across illegally. You have to be deported. You're sentenced to time served, and your family's got to go too. And then they got to find your family, who have been distributed who knows where. So the mothers, the fathers, they get prosecuted, sentenced to time served, and kicked out. And then the kids just get shipped through UPS, I'm guessing. I mean, that's what it sounds like they're doing. Because I mean, as far as I know, they've been losing people. So I mean, and we don't know. We know the government is incredibly inefficient. So, and these people don't have serial numbers. So, well, is Trump going to say we should just tattoo a number on their arm so we can keep track of them? I mean, that wouldn't surprise me.
That's
it
even
wouldn't
more
surprise me.
Nazi-ish.
Oh, I know that, but like it's basically an allusion to the whole idea that we're creating these things, these camps, and it's a dangerous precedent to set for what is considered to be a shining beacon. The experiment that has unbelievably continued on, the oldest constitution currently in use in the entire world, as far as I know. Our constitution, created in 1776, is the oldest or not 1777. It was a little bit after the Declaration. No. Yeah, I think it was in 1776 the Constitution was created. 1774 was the Declaration of Independence. Either way, our Constitution is the oldest modern Constitution still in use. And I mean, it's a big deal. And if this thing falls apart, and gets destroyed from within, cancer-riddled mess, it's a big deal. And it really does change the way the world will look in the future. The top-down authoritarian state could make a resurgence, and it's kind of scary. I really don't think a nation state and monarchies are a solid future for the United States and the world becoming a galactic people.
Yeah.
I want to get on other planets, man.
Exactly. And before you say, well, Obama did it, because that's the fucking goddamn first thing I hear.
He was
all
bad
across
with
the board,
deportations.
right?
He was terrible with it. But
you're right.
He was centrist, and he was terrible at it.
But they didn't separate
but
families at borders, Hannah.
Not
they didn't
like
do
this.
that.
Not
you know
like
what
this.
happened? They had minors come across the borders without family members. That happened.
They had unaccompanied minors. That
Exactly.
was the big hoopla, that there was all these children that were coming across the border, and they got to the United States, and we didn't know what the hell to do with them. That was the huge thing. Actually, Sean Hannity, Hannity or Beck, Sean Hannity or Glenn Beck, one of the two. I'm going to say it was probably Glenn Beck. Glenn Beck said, like, listen, I had this huge charity, and you know what? I can't say no. We need to help the kids. And a bunch of really conservative people said, no, you can't do that. And he said, I'm going to lose a ton of money on this, but it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do. And now that is the biggest point that I want to make to this entire thing, is that it's the right thing to do. The Nuremberg defense, my boss told me to do it. It was what I was told by the boss to do. Well, you were told to light people on fire in boilers. Well, my boss told me to do it. I was told to poison people to death. My boss told me to do it. In Geneva, we determined that the Nuremberg defense was not a valid defense. You cannot say that. And all these ICE people saying, it's my job. I'm sorry. It's my job. This is what I get paid to do. No. Your morals give you the ability to say no. And in a government job, it's in their bylaws. It's in part of your job description, is that if you are given an immoral or illegal order, you have the ability to question or refuse that order. There can be, you can be MP, you can have all kinds of repercussions, but it's the right thing to do. And that's the issue here, is that, like, people, these ICE guys, there's a bunch of them that are quitting their jobs over this, and they're doing the right thing. This is the right thing to do, is to refuse to do this. And the people who are doing this, when the fit hits the shan, so to speak, the people who are actively supporting and enforcing this, could be on the wrong side of history, and this could be something where we could talk about human rights violations if the United States has a major swing in November and in 2020, and real consequences come for these kinds of horrible actions. This could be something that turns into a real deal. I mean, people could be violating the law and violating international law right now. And that's the right thing to do, is to protect families and protect children. I don't care what politics you are. You don't hurt the kids, man. That's just the wrong thing to do. And I bet you if you isolated people and pulled them away from their politics and just asked them that question, clean and clear with no other context, they would agree with me.
Exactly. And people want to say, what's the big deal, right? What's the big deal? Here's the big deal, folks. The big deal. The big deal is that we're separating families all across the border. You can claim they're illegals, but all you're doing is just trying to dehumanize them. You're trying to take away from who they are. This zero tolerance policy and child separation is not something being used against illegals. It's something being used against people inside the United States as well. This is something happening at our borders. And fine, you want to sit here, you want to talk about how you can help people. Stop trying to defend this. Stop trying to support this. Say, I want to stand up against the administration. I want to stand up and say, no more to this. All the administration is doing is taking an existing law and using it to take children away. The bottom line here, folks, is the Trump administration is breaking up families in an effort to discourage asylum seekers and to get a fucking wall put up. In the process, they are losing children into a ill-prepared system for housing for them, and is potentially permanently breaking up families as a result. This behavior and this zero-tolerance policy underlying it is a pure Trump creation. It is not the result of a new or changed law. It is not the result of something that has been around for so many generations that we just accepted it. This is not the result of a Democratic or a Republican discussion. This is the result of the Trump administration. This is the result of an administration that does not give a fuck about who you are or what you want to do. And we can sit around and pretend all fucking day long that this is just going to be the new norm. I encourage you to go out, protest, go out, get rid of your officials. If you can afford to, go out and go to the borders. I don't care what we do, but I'm telling you right now that if this continues, there's going to be a revolution in the United States. And you can either be on the side that wants to not separate families, that doesn't want to marginalize individuals, that doesn't want to essentially create a death sentence based on the fact that you just want your own way, that you want your policy, your party to be the big dogs on the block. Or you can turn around and actually support good legislation. You can support logical ideas. You can support a way that we can help fix this without harming humanist principles. That was a mouthful. Thank you all so much for joining us for another Cellar Door Skeptics. We'll be back next week with a little bit less passionate episode, but you never know what Trump will do in the meantime. Thank you all so much, and have an amazing night.
Been listening to a presentation of Cellar Door Skeptics. Check us out on Spreaker. CellarDoorSkeptics.com.